Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Padjana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Padjana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Padujikacharya Ashtottara to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Vishnupad Paramahamsa Padujikacharya Ashtottara to the Sri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananda Koti Vaishnavani Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On this 21st day of December 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Beginning a new chapter, Chapter 5, entitled Karma Yoga, Action and Krishna Consciousness, on page 229. And I just wanted to tell all our guests, maybe tuning in, if you have a question or a comment at the end of the class, you can call 858-291-9815. Actually, don't call, text. And we'll try to answer your question or repeat your comment. That's 858-291-9815. Okay, text 1. Arjuna Vacha Sanyasam Karmanam Krishna Punar Yogam Chashangsasi Yakcheta Etayorekam Tanme Bruhi Sunishtitam. Arjuna Vacha Sanyasam Karmanam Krishna Punar Yogam Chashangsasi Yakcheta Etayorekam Tanme Bruhi Sunishtitam. Arjuna Vacha Sanyasam Karmanam Krishna Punar Yogam Chashangsasi Yakcheta Etayorekam Tanme Bruhi Sunishtitam. Arjuna Vacha. Sannyasam karmanam Krishna. Punah yogam cha sangsasi. Yakcheya etayorekam. Tanme bruhi sunishtitam. Arjuna Vacha. Sannyasam karmanam Krishna. Punah yogam cha sangsasi. Yakcheya etayorekam. Tanme bruhi sunishtitam. Arjuna Vacha. Sannyasam karmanam Krishna. Punah yogam cha sangsasi. Yakcheya etayorekam. Tanme bruhi sunishtitam. Arjuna Uvacha. Arjuna said, Sasyasam, renunciation, karmanam, of all activities. Krishna, O Krishna, punaha, again, yogam, devotional service, cha, also, shangsasi, you are praising. Yet, which treyaha is more beneficial? Etayo, of these two, ekam, one, tat, that, may, unto me, bruhi, please tell, sunishtitam, definitely. Translation. Arjuna said, O Krishna, first of all, you asked me to renounce work, and then again you recommend work with devotion. Now will you kindly tell me definitely which of the two is more beneficial? Purport. In this 5th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord says that work in devotional service is better than dry mental speculation. Devotional service is easier than the latter because, being transcendental in nature, it frees one from reaction. In the 2nd chapter, preliminary knowledge of the soul and its entanglement in the material body were explained. How to get out of this material engagement by buddhi yoga or devotional service was also explained therein. In the 3rd chapter, it was explained that a person who is situated on the platform of knowledge no longer has any duties to perform. And in the 4th chapter, the Lord told Arjuna that all kinds of sacrificial work culminate in knowledge. However, at the end of the 4th chapter, the Lord advised Arjuna to wake up and fight, being situated in perfect knowledge. Therefore, by simultaneously stressing the importance of both work in devotion and inaction in knowledge, Krishna has perplexed Arjuna and confused his determination. Arjuna understands that renunciation in knowledge involves a cessation of all kinds of work performed as sense activities. But if one performs work in devotional service, then how is work stopped? In other words, he thinks that sannyas, or renunciation in knowledge, should be altogether free from all kinds of activity, because work and renunciation appear to him to be incompatible. He appears not to have understood that work in full knowledge is non-reactive, and is therefore the same as inaction. He inquires, therefore, whether he should cease work altogether, or work with full knowledge. Om Jnana Timanandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chukshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So this is reminiscent of Arjuna's confusion at the beginning of chapter 3, where he says, "O Janardhan, O Keshava, why do you want to engage me in this ghastly warfare if you think that intelligence is better than food of work?" In other words, the previous chapter ended with Krishna talking about nirvana, Brahma nirvana, which certainly sounds like you're simply situated in the state beyond work, beyond activities. So the idea is that work. You remember we had this statement in the 4th chapter. One has to know what karma is, what akarma is, and what vikarma is. And karma in that context means activities, fruit of activity, but within the Vedic paradigm. In other words, according to Karma Kanda say. Vikarma, vicious work, fruit of work, that's outside the boundaries. And akarma is activity that produces no reaction. And therefore, a few verses later, he says, therefore one has to understand what action is, what inaction is. It's to see action and inaction and inaction and action. Remember that kind of tongue twister. So Krishna consciousness is inaction, acting, but really not doing anything in one sense. That'll come up. That phrase will come up here in the 5th chapter. Even though doing all kinds of things, you don't do anything at all. That also was mentioned in the last chapter, because karma there is reserved for activity, either Vedic or unvedic, vikarmic. That's fruitive. That's really action because it produces a reaction, either good or bad. Good being you go to heaven or you get a better birth or whatever. But either way, it keeps you trapped in the material world. So Krishna consciousness, being realistic, doesn't equate activity automatically with fruitive activity reactions and bondage, because it's impossible to do nothing. Krishna says at the beginning of the 3rd chapter. You have to act, so the quality of the action has to be changed, so it's non-fruitive and therefore non-reactive, and in fact purifying of previous karmic activities. So that's where the knowledge comes in. Now, how to act and how to think in such a way that you're doing so many things, but you're not incurring any karma, any bondage, and you're gradually liberating yourself from previous karmic activities, reactions. So that will be that, and then focus at the beginning here is on sannyas, because sannyas literally means giving up, or renouncing, complete renunciation. What does that actually mean? Does it mean becoming completely inert, which is impractical? What is sannyas? That will come up here in the beginning of the chapter. Okay. So let's go on. That was the introductory verse. Krishna says, Shri Bhagavano Vacha Sannyasa Karma Yogascha Nikshreya Karava Bhav Tayastu Karma Sannyasat Karma Yogo Vishishyate. The personality of Godhead replied, the renunciation of work and work in devotion are both good for liberation, but of the two, work in devotional service is better than renunciation of work. Purport. Fruitive activities seeking sense gratification are cause for material bondage. As long as one is engaged in activities aimed at improving the standard of bodily comfort, one is sure to transmigrate to different types of bodies, thereby continuing material bondage perpetually. Srimad Bhagavatam 5:4-6 confirms this as follows. So I'll say, you say. Nunam pramatta kurute vikarma yadindriya pritaya apranoti nasadhu manyayata atmanoyam asannapi kleshada asadeha padabhavastavada bodhajato yavan jigyasata atma tatpam yavat kriyastavadidam manovai karmatmakam yena sharira bandhaha evam manakarma vashang prayunkte avidyatman jupadiyamane pritirna yavan mahivasudeve namuchyate dehi yogena tavat. People are mad after sense gratification, and they do not know that this present body, which is full of miseries, is a result of one's fruitive activities in the past. Although this body is temporary, it is always giving one trouble in many ways. Therefore, to act for sense gratification is not good. One is considered to be a failure in life as long as he makes no inquiry about his real identity. As long as he does not know his real identity, he has to work for fruitive results for sense gratification. And as long as one is engrossed in the consciousness of sense gratification, one has to transmigrate from one body to another. Although the mind may be engrossed in fruitive activities and influenced by ignorance, one must develop a love for devotional service to Vasudeva. Only then can one have the opportunity to get out of the bondage of material existence. Therefore, Gyan, or knowledge that one is not this material body but spirit soul, is not sufficient for liberation. One has to act in the status of pure spirit soul. Otherwise, there is no escape from material bondage. Action in Krishna consciousness is not, however, action on the fruit of platform. Activities performed in full knowledge strengthen one's advancement in real knowledge. Without Krishna consciousness, mere renunciation of fruit of activities does not actually purify the heart of a conditioned soul. As long as the heart is not purified, one has to work on the fruit of platform. But action in Krishna consciousness automatically helps one escape the result of fruit of action, so that one need not descend to the material platform. Therefore, action in Krishna consciousness is always superior to renunciation, which always entails a risk of falling. Renunciation without Krishna consciousness is incomplete, as is confirmed by Srila Rupa Goswami in his Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu 1.2.258. I'll say, you say. Papan chikataya buddhya harisambandhi vastunaha mumukshubi parityago vairagyam bhalgukatyate. When persons eager to achieve liberation renounce things related to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, thinking them to be material, their renunciation is called incomplete. Renunciation is complete when it is in the knowledge that everything in existence belongs to the Lord and that no one should claim proprietorship over anything. One should understand that, factually, nothing belongs to anyone. Then where is the question of renunciation? One who knows that everything is Krishna's property is always situated in renunciation. Since everything belongs to Krishna, everything should be employed in the service of Krishna. This perfect form of action in Krishna consciousness is far better than any amount of artificial renunciation by a sannyasi of the Mayavadi school. So, now we get the distinction between renunciation of work completely, which is actually impossible, as Krishna says at the beginning of the third chapter. You have to live, you have to do something, even to keep body and soul together. You have to act in some way. But sannyas, what is commonly called sannyas, if it's devoid of yoga, of bhakti yoga, is just very troublesome. That's the impersonal view. And if you recall, in the fourth chapter, text 10, there was a purport where the verse has this phrase, Vita Raga Bhaya Kroda. Vita Raga Bhaya Manmayama Upashata. Many souls in the past have become purified, giving up attachment, fear, and anger. And in the purport, Prabhupada goes through each one of these and shows how they are the central quality of a certain class of people who don't come to devotional service. And the Bhaya part, which is fear, is meant for the Mayavadis, for the impersonalists. They're fearful because just by imperfect knowledge, it seems obvious that having a material body is the cause, and full of desires and acting fruitively is the cause of bondage in this world. So, not believing in or wanting, having faith in devotional service, in the existence of the Supreme Personality of God, they're thinking that the impersonal Brahman is supreme. That's the real reality, the ultimate reality. Then they choose, or they try to live in such a way that they won't get any kind of body at all. That they'll still simply be living in a state of pure consciousness with no content. That's what Mayavad is. You can see how abominable it is. That's why Prabodhananda Saraswati in his Chaitanya Chandramrita, he has his first Prabhupada quote all the time. Kaivalyam nadakayate. This Kaivalyam is a word that signifies this oneness, merging in Brahman, is hellish for a devotee. Anyone who's been blessed with the merciful sidelong glance of Lord Chaitanya and been thus empowered will see that what the Mayavadis are striving for is just anathema for devotees. And this comes clear when they read the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Lord Chaitanya's talks with the sannyasis, Prakashananda and the other sannyasis of Benares, his talks with Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. They all see the light in his presence and with his, that they were going down a blind path with this Sankaracharya, and they all became followers of Lord Chaitanya. So, These three verses, by the way, by Rishabdev, are really a wonderful little lesson in and of themselves. And so they're worth studying and really getting understanding. He begins by roundly condemning. If you read the teachings of Rishabdev, he doesn't pull any punches. The very first verse, it says, don't work hard, simply work hard. Any human being should not work hard for the kind of standard of sense pleasure that's available to the hogs. He literally uses the word stool eating hogs, right there. So you can see his 100 sons led by Bharat must be really sitting up straight. This is going to be a heavy lesson. So that's the most famous verse. He says, human life is meant for austerity, tapasya. But it has to be divine tapasya, which is meant for purification of one's being, senses, mind, intelligence, everything. So one becomes able to taste Brahma Sukham, spiritual happiness that doesn't end. That's the key thing. It doesn't end. Material sense gratification is obviously flickering. So a few verses later, he has this little lesson. So the first thing it says, those who are simply performing vikarma, remember our vikarma means fruitive activity outside the bounds of the Vedic injunctions, are surely completely mad. Not just matta, but pramata. Indriya priti is exactly translated as sense gratification, in the sense of sense gratification. They're striving for that. They're performing all kinds of vicious activity. He says, I don't think it's a very good idea, nasaru manye, because by that, the soul is sure to attain another deha, another body, which is sure to be kleshada, the giver of misery. In other words, you're just ensuring a miserable future. And let's be honest, the flickering little pleasures that come with sense gratification are completely, overwhelmed, and the proportion to the suffering you undergo is way out of proportion. A little bit of flickering pleasure, and that too is compromised in so many ways, and a whole lot of pain comes from that. In other words, it's a bad investment, anyone who really looks at it. So then he gives us the central verse here. The second verse is so important. This combination of yavat tavat is used twice in this verse. Yavat tavat means as long as you do this, or as long as you don't do this, then you won't get this. The tavat is this. So parabhavas tavat, that long you will be defeated. Parabhavas is defeat, meaning birth and death, old age, disease. As long as that defeat is born of jata, abodha, ignorance. Abodha is ignorance. So that's it. And therefore you will experience that defeat as long as you don't inquire, jigyasa, into the truth of the soul, of Atma. You can say Atma can also mean the supreme soul. In other words, if you have no curiosity or interest in ultimate questions, where does everything come from, who am I, why am I suffering, then you're doomed. You're going to be defeated again and again. So then he explains why. Yavat kriyas, as long as you are working fruitively. Kriya here means fruitive activity. That long, your mind will be karmatmakam, filled with fruitive ideas, plans and fears. That's another karmatmakam, previous activities or whatever, results of your karma. So the mind is filled with all these positive and negative material ideas and emotions and things. And that mind, saturated in that way, material mind, yena, by which you will get a body which is bondage, sharira bandha. So you see the very logical. Your defeat is born of ignorance. You don't know who you are. You don't know what to do. You're completely ignorant. You're almost like an animal. And you will remain such until you inquire into Atma Tattva, the truth of the self. Makes perfect sense. Why is that? Because if you're not inquiring into these transcendental subject matters, you're sure to be acting fruitively, like we've done millions and millions of births before, and like the animals and lower beasts are doing automatically, because they don't have the capacity to inquire. So that mind that you're creating by acting fruitively, which is karmatmaka, full of fruit of desires and activities and memories, will bring about another bondage to another material body. So what's the solution? So then in the third verse, he gives the solution. So then he reiterates, Eva mana karma vashang puyungte avidyamanupadiyamani. So now you have the mind, which is karma vashang, means impelled by karmic impulse, you see, by fruitive impulses. Avidyatmani, and the soul covered and, swimming in ignorance. Avidya. So therefore, what's the solution? Priti Nayavan Mai Vasudevi. Here you have the Yavatava, that the last two lines here. Priti is love. Nayavan, as long as one does not attain love for me, Vasudeva. Here Rishabdev is revealing himself to be an incarnation of Krishna. You will not be liberated from a body. Namuchite dehi yogena tava. That long you will not be liberated. So there's no mukti without bhakti. That's in other places too. Mukti, the very definition of mukti given in the Bhagavatam is a result of bhakti. Mukti hitvanyata rupam swarupena vabhastiti. Mukti is defined in the Bhagavatam as being reinstated in your original position, your original body. Hitvanyata rupam, giving up all these other bodies that we have and that we're trapped by which are a result of the mind saturated that you're cultivating, material mind. And being situated in your Sarup Siddhi, your original form, spiritual form in relation to Krishna. So, how to reach this state? Therefore, the whole solution is not to give up activities altogether, which is impossible anyway, but to learn how to act in such a way that you're developing your love for Vasudeva or Krishna. And that's exactly what Lord Chaitanya taught. What did Sarvabhauma write? He wrote this famous verse. Vairagya vidya nija bhakti yoga shikshatameka purushak purana. That same ancient person, Krishna, now in the form of Lord Chaitanya, the name Lord Chaitanya, has come to teach bhakti to himself, characterized by vairagya and vidya, detachment and knowledge. Now, we've been through this many times before, but more important than sannyas, which emphasizes renunciation, tyaga, and there's plenty of that. That's an important element. But that's not the end of it. The real essential part is the vairagya, is the internal state you're cultivating by engaging the very senses that are full with material desires and the very mind with all these karmic thoughts, engaging them by the instructions of Shastra and Guru and Sadhu and everything else in the service of the Lord. And thereby purifying one's consciousness and purifying one's body and senses of kama, the simple about it. And then that valuable state of vairagya comes. Now, if you recall, back in this very second chapter of the whole Bhagavatam, after Sutta Goswami is answering the questions, what is that dharma where the soul can be completely satisfied? And he gives the answer, bhakti yoga, that which engenders bhakti for Krishna. Savai pungsang paro dharma, the supreme dharma, yato bhakti radhokshaje, which engenders or results, develops bhakti, loving devotional service to Adhokshaja, the transcendent Lord. But then he gives qualifications, which are not so easy to meet. Ahitiki apratihata. It has to be free of any material desire. Well, there's all kinds of religions in the world, and there are billions of people who are, but where is that ahitiki bhakti? The people are going to church to pray for material things, safety, save my son, give me the daily bread, let me go to heaven, please, It's all give me. Where is that religion that's only based on working for the pleasure of the Lord? Only in bhakti, and only in pure bhakti. Basically, Lord Chaitanya's bhakti and the other sampradayas teach that. So then a couple of verses later, or maybe the next verse, Vasudeve Bhagavati, he says Vasudeve, Prityana Maya Vasudeve. Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Payojitaha Janayatyashu Vairagyam Gyanam Chayadohaitikam. So it's not that you have to work separately to get this vairagya, but it's a natural result of this bhakti yoga. Vasudeva Bhagavati, by engaging in bhakti yoga, bhakti yoga Adhokshaja, to Adhokshaja, Krishna, the transcendent Lord. Janayati, exactly the same word, generates quickly, ashu, vairagam, this detachment accompanied by knowledge. They go together, knowledge and detachment. So, in other words, one progresses on this path to liberation and beyond. Liberation is not what we're after, but it's a byproduct of the development of bhakti. So all of that will become clear here. That better than mere sannyas, just to generate, emphasizing the sannyas aspect. You're giving up this, taking on the clothes and things, and being renounced. That's not enough. Unaccompanied by yoga, bhakti yoga, sannyas is simply very troublesome, and it's impossible. So then Prabhupada also quotes this verse about the different kinds of vairagya. He's dealing with vairagya here. This is very important, the distinction between yukta vairagya and polgu vairagya. Polgu actually means weak. In other words, I give it up, but I'm not getting a taste for Krishna consciousness. The desire is still there. Prabhupada tells us in this regard. He quotes this one verse: those things related to Vishnu. Imagine, being in that mentality. We're trained. You don't see the deity as just a stone statue. Then you're in a hellish mentality. There's a verse worth memorizing. Arche Vishnu Shiladir, Yasya Narakisa. A Naraki is a resident of hell. So there's a whole list. You see the devotees as belonging to some race or some nationality. You see the guru as an ordinary man. You see the Charanamrita as ordinary water. The holy name is an ordinary sound. Doesn't it hellish to think of it like that? These are all manifestations of transcendence of Krishna himself. And out of his mercy he comes as the deity so we can see him and serve him. We can't, because we can't see him in his spiritual form with our present eyes. So out of his mercy, through the agency of the pure devotee, he appears as the deity. And also, I may add all the paintings. It says, well, the deity can appear in stone, in wood, or in paint. Prabhupada says, I think that's even in the Shastra. Well, if in paint, then why not in pixels? That makes the deity a lot more accessible, doesn't it? So the point is that we have to purify our vision so we can see in these forms and these manifestations the Lord himself and become attracted. Krishna is all attractive. So first Prabhupada quotes this one about the Polga Vairagya. What does it mean? Prapanchikati with the mentality that things in relation to Hari Sambandhivasan are prapanchikatiya, they're material. Material food, material, wood and stone, and everything material. You guys are just kidding yourselves, But they're already living in a hellish world, right? They don't have a chance to get the nectar. So, mumukshubi, desiring liberation, give everything up. Well, you can't give everything up, so it's foolish, That's why they have this verse that Vimuktamaninas, they think they're liberated because they've risen up by great austerity and repression, the senses to the Brahman platform. But they're not really liberated, because how long can you stay in the suspended animation, in the sensory deprivation chamber? You're lying in there. I'm conscious that I am. I'm not thinking any thoughts, but that's not who you are. Eventually they come down, so they fall down and come down. So this is Polgavai, this is weak Vairagya. Prabhupada says there's a river in India called the Polgu River, which only during the rainy season has water. Otherwise it's just a river, bed without any water. But he said if you go, you go and you can put your hand, reach down into the sand there and you'll feel the moisture, the water's under there, and it's still wet. So he Prabhupada said, and so if you look into the hearts of these Mayavadis, you'll see all kinds of desires, and other material desires. They're repressing them, but it's weak, and they come down. But real Vairagya, it's worth memorizing this verse. Anasaktasya vishayan yataham nirbandha Krishna sambandhe yuktam vairagyam uchate. Yukta Vairagya and Polga Vairagya. We're after Yukta Vairagya, which means detachment in yoga and through yoga. So he gives a little definition. Anasaktasya. Asakta means attachment. Without attachment, Vishayan, the object of the senses, where appropriate and at the right time and the place to engage them. Prabhupada says I think it's in the introduction to the CC I was reading, we can use everything in Krishna service, even missiles. I don't know how we use missiles yet. But anyways, did you ever read that? You ever read that? But the idea is that, just like it's kind of a little bit shocking when you read, Krishna Lila, especially after he gets out of Vrindavan, I mean, there's plenty of violence in there where he kills these demons, but it's more like play. But then when he gets out, in Mathura, it's serious business. He's killing whole armies of Jarasan, all the elephants and the horses are killed. There's a river of blood. Wow, that's bhakti, because it's Krishna doing it. So to engage these things as appropriate. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe. In this way, you don't get bound up to the objects of the senses because you're using them in Krishna's service. You see how it works? The very senses that are otherwise engaged in sense gratification, and have the desire, the mind, the senses, and the intelligence is where lust resides. Remember the 3rd chapter. So you all have experience of that. So those very same senses become your friends because they're being used in Krishna's service. Just like we use so much paraphernalia to worship the deity, this temple, which at such great effort and expense was prepared and is not being maintained. It's nothing but a material thing, but because it's being used in Krishna's service, it's transcendental, it's so important, it gives us facility to serve Krishna. So, therefore, the body itself becomes your friend, becomes something that is not troubling you, but is something that is facilitating your service and service to others. So that's yukta vairagya, and strong vairagya. Nobody, and we've seen, how many times have we heard Haridas Thakur? He passed the test. He was chanting the holy name non-stop, and the most beautiful girl in the world. Even Maya Devi herself. It happened twice, actually. The second is not as famous, but it also I was reading recently. The prostitute comes, in the middle of the night, young man. Hare Krishna, just wait there, I'm going to finish my rounds. You know what happened. They purified her, she became a devotee. Maya Devi personified came to do the same thing. And she surrendered unto him. He was so powerful, because his renunciation was, like a stone. He couldn't get in because he was feeling and experiencing the bliss at every second. So that's what karma yoga in the highest sense means. Work in devotion, and that's what's going to be. That's the subject of this chapter. Okay, any questions? I've got this going. Nothing yet. All right, let me just put this. See if this. Sorry about that. Okay. We'll leave that right there. Let's move on. Text number 3. Gaya sanitya sannyasi yona dveshti nakangshati nirdvandvo hi mahabaho sukham bandhat pamuchyate. One who neither hates nor desires the fruits of his activities is known to be always renounced. Such a person, free from all dualities, easily overcomes material bondage and is completely liberated. Almighty Amdarjun. One who is fully in Krishna consciousness is always a renouncer. This is the purport. One who is fully in Krishna consciousness is always a renouncer because he feels neither hatred nor desire for the results of his actions. Such a renouncer, dedicated to the transcendental loving service of the Lord, is fully qualified in knowledge because he knows his constitutional position in relationship with Krishna. He knows fully well that Krishna is the whole and that he is part and parcel of Krishna. Such knowledge is perfect because it is qualitatively and quantitatively correct. The concept of oneness with Krishna is incorrect because the part cannot be equal to the whole. Knowledge that one is one in quality, yet different in quantity, is correct transcendental knowledge, leading one to become full in himself, having nothing to aspire to or lament over. There is no duality in his mind because whatever he does for Krishna. Being thus freed from the platform of dualities, he is liberated even in this material world. So, now he's explaining who is a real sannyasi. Sannyasi means one who is fully renounced. But the only one who can be fully renounced is one who is using his mind, body, senses, and everything in the service of Krishna. That's real yoga. That's the link up is the service. and he doesn't hate or desire anything, because it's all for Krishna. You remember how in the 3rd chapter we were saying, okay, I think the 2nd chapter, where you're entitled to to your work, but you're not entitled to the fruits. And don't be proud of your work. Think, well, okay, well, at least I did it. No, don't even. You're not entitled to that either. You're not to think of that you're the doer. So the idea is that, in a sense, you're not doing anything. If everything you're doing is by the impetus or under the desire of Krishna, or as transmitted through the Guru and so forth, it's all a matter of duty, then you don't have any attachment to it. Our job is just to try as best we can to perform our duties and give the fruits to Krishna. Sometimes we'll fail for one reason or another, but if we tried our best and we were praying to Krishna at the time, it just wasn't happening, then we're not attached, Whereas the fruitive worker, he's trying to get this job, that job, sell this, sell that, and he fails. It feels like a failure, What's the use of living, So it's this is how one can actually going back to equipoise. Remember that famous phrase, equipoise? For years we thought it was equiposed, because someone didn't know the word and they misspelled it in the book and everyone memorized it that way. So equipoise means this duality being. Remember the 2nd chapter. How's it go? Prajahati yada kaman sarvam parta manogatana even stita pragyasta doshite. Samadukke sukari dhiram. One who is dhira, is equipoised in happiness and distress, victory and defeat, all these different things. Well, how can you do that? If you're personally invested in it, and you're, because you want to enjoy the end, and it doesn't come about, then that's a great blow to your self-esteem and your ego and everything else, But if you're not invested in it because as something for you, but you're invested in it because it's Krishna's desire, then your success is simply trying, and leave the result up to Krishna. Just think of Prabhupada's life; it's so illustrative. All that work in India. He had established a league of devotees. He had a place. He even had a disciple. They started with, they would go out Harinam. Boom! It all crashed together, down. Now Prabhupada could have given up at that time. Well, I tried to fulfill the desire, but no, he kept going. Even though at a certain point he was practically penniless, trying to sell some BTGs that he was printing at great effort, on the streets of Delhi. He had a heat stroke, so many different things, and he never gave up. He had this mission, and his success was simply trying. Even coming to America, he almost died from a heart attack, So that he's the perfect example, and Krishna, as we see in the Shastra also, he puts his great devotees through so much difficulty sometimes to exalt them, to show how glorious. Prahlad, the Pandavas, they all went through so much. And even I've just been listening to these lectures Prabhupada gives on Kunti's prayers. They're so wonderful, And you come to the one, Vipadak Santa Takshashvat Tatta Tatta Jagaguru. She's going through all the dangers they went through. Let them happen again and again, because by happening we see you again and again. But now we're through with the war and you're leaving us. Who cares? Don't leave us. You were with us so intimately when we were calling at you from the bottom of our heart in greatest trouble. So that's the devotee's pure devotee's mentality. Is that Krishna is always with you. But when you're in a position of danger, especially if you're trying to serve him, then he's with you even more intimately, because you're calling on him at every moment in the situation to succeed in this task or something. So this is one who is a real sannyasi, who has no sense of duality, dveshti kanshati, abhorrent or longing. No, there's none of that. Near Dvandva is beyond the dualities. Sukham bandha pramuchite. So that who is that sannyasi? The real sannyasi is this yukta vairagya. It's someone who's working always with this sense of detachment and simply for the pleasure of Krishna, taking pleasure in Krishna's pleasure. That's the key. Finding, it all boils down to Priti Niyavan Maya Vasudevi, developing love for Vasudeva, which love being defined as simply focus on the pleasure of the beloved. That's real love. Atmendriya, Krishna Deya Priti Icha, desiring the pleasure of Krishna's senses, which are transcendental. That's defined as prema. Okay, one or two more. So now he goes into this Sankhya thing. This Sankhya Yoga Patak Bala Prabhadandina Panditaha Ekamapyastita Samyag Ubayo Vindate Palam. Only the ignorant speak of devotional service, karma yoga, as being different from the analytical study of the material world, Sankhya. Those who are actually learned say that he who applies himself well to one of these paths achieves the results of both. Purport. The aim of the analytical study of the material world is to find the soul of existence. The soul of the material world is Vishnu, or the Supersoul. Devotional service to the Lord entails service to the Supersoul. One process is to find the root of the tree, and the other is to water the root. The real student of Sankhya philosophy finds the root of the material world, Vishnu, and then in perfect knowledge engages himself in the service of the Lord. Therefore, in essence, there is no difference between the two, because the aim of both is Vishnu. Those who do not know the ultimate end say that the purposes of Sankhya and Karma Yoga are not the same, but one who is learned knows the unifying aim in these different processes. So where is our Sankhya? There's so much, taught. I mean, I immediately think of the third canto, where there's very detailed descriptions, understanding material nature and the different elements, how they develop, one after another, from false ego and related to the, influenced by the mode of ignorance, produces all the different elements, and then the senses, and it comes from sound and ether and all of the development. So that's Sankhya, that's our Sankhya. But that's not the full teachings of Kapila Dev. That may be the essence of the teachings of the false Kapila Dev. He's not really a Kapila Dev, Kapila Muni. But Kapila Dev, the Lord Kapila, his aim is bhakti. As I once pulled out the Sadhu Sangashtaka, which is the first teachings of Kapila Dev, initial teachings in chapter 25 of the third canto. And it's all about transferring your affection from the material world to the sadhus, because in the association of the sadhus, you'll hear about Krishna and you'll develop pure bhakti. It's all about bhakti. But in the course of doing that, we want to know, well, how is this material world situated? How did it come about? The inquiring mind. That's part of what the Bhagavatam tells, not just in Kapila Dev, but there's other sections like that. This guy describes second canto also. So, but what's the aim of that knowledge? It's similar to the scientific analysis. They're always, finding new ways of manipulating material energy. But the aim is, manipulating for material benefit. Build a weapon. So much science and brain power is put into refining these weapons. Demonic is the 16th chapter. But the devotee doesn't dwell on that all the time. That's not what we do, and sit around trying to analyze the material energy. But we understand the principles, how it came about, originating with Krishna. The material energy is apara prakriti, lower energy, because we need an environment that we can try to dominate and pretend to be Krishna, and get cut down again and again, so that we'll learn our lesson. You can't keep them in the spiritual world, because we're disturbing factors. We're disturbing everyone's devotional life. Just like if someone in this temple suddenly starts smoking pot in the room, we've had it. You can't stay, Prabhu. You have to. So here we are. And it's good to know what this world is all about, but not investigating, making that our whole life. So Sankhya and yoga, and they go together. In other words, if you really practice karma yoga or bhakti yoga, devotional service, then there'll be an element of Sankhya in your understanding, as we understand. But it's proportional. In other words, we know how it came about, and we know that now we want to get out of it, and how to do that. Okay, one more. Actually, at this point, if there are any questions, we can entertain them. We haven't had any texts. This is the first night we're doing this. Yeah. But who knows? There's still a few minutes left. Okay, we have time for one more. Text 5. Yat sankhya prapyate stanam tad yogai rapigamyate ekam sankyam cha yogam cha yak pashyati sapashyati. One who knows that the position reached by means of analytical study can also be attained by devotional service, and who therefore sees analytical study and devotional service to be on the same level, sees things as they are. Purport. The real purpose of philosophical research is to find the ultimate goal of life. Since the ultimate goal of life is self-realization, there is no difference between the conclusions reached by the two processes. By Sankhya philosophical research, one comes to the conclusion that a living entity is not a part and parcel of the material world, but of the Supreme Spirit whole. Consequently, the Spirit soul has nothing to do with the material world. His actions must be in some relation with the Supreme. When he acts in Krishna consciousness, he is actually in his constitutional position. In the first process, Sankhya, one has to become detached from matter, and in the devotional yoga process, one has to attach himself to the work of Krishna consciousness. Factually, both processes are the same, although superficially one process appears to involve detachment, and the other process appears to involve attachment. Detachment from matter and attachment to Krishna are one and the same. One who can see these things, one who can see this sees things as they are. Okay. Just one again. They're one and the same, but if you just try to be detached from matter, you're not going to get Krishna consciousness. But if you just try to be Krishna conscious, you'll get detachment from matter. So Krishna consciousness solves the whole problem. That's ultimately what we're after. Okay. So we have time for a little poem. I don't think I did this one for a while. This is actually a glorification of the Hare Krishna mantra by Raghunath Das Goswami. Radheti nama navasundara siddhu mugdam Krishneti nama madhurabhutagara dugdam Savakshanam sodabhiraga himena ramyam kritvata daiva pibame rasane chadarte. An excellent fresh nectar drink with endless subtle tastes, such as the name of Radha, by whom all three worlds are graced. Condensed milk that is wonderfully delicious, thick and sweet, such as the name of Krishna, in whom all attractions meet. Now mix these drinks, O thirsty tongue, and add the fragrant cooling spice of love, a prize the wise will try to buy at any price. And then at every moment drink this beverage most fine, and make my heart supremely blissful, peaceful, and divine. So that's reminiscent of Rupa Goswami's famous verse. We should all know it. Quoted at least twice in the first chapter of Anjalila. Tunde tandabani rating batanute tundavali labdeye karna kroda kadhambani gadhayate garna budebhyaks piham chetak prangana sangani vijayate sarvendriyanam kutim no jane janitake yadvidamitai krishneti varnadvihi. I don't have a poem for this one. I don't know how much nectar the two syllables Krishna have produced. When I chant them, they seem to dance within my mouth, and I want to have millions of mouths. When they enter the ears, they seem to sprout, and I want to have millions of ears. And when they enter the courtyard of the heart, then the mind becomes fixed on Krishna and the senses become inert. And like that. Very nice verse. Okay, we'll adjourn. Thank you for your attention. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. We'll pick up with text 6 tomorrow.